I've put it into a site density and traffic discussion, density versus retail, environmental connection with the Schuylkill River, and particularly context in the neighborhood, pedestrian connectivity, and then what are the implications of having a very large rental building in our neighborhood? How is the property going to be managed? So with that, I would like to pass over to Sean, who is going to share his screen. If I can't get him to share, then I will share the presentation.
Hillary, if it works, Michael Brawler, our architect, should be on. He was going to share the screen for us.
Okay.
If not, I can do it.
All right. Well, I'm looking for that little up button, which can help me share my screen, but I can't seem to find it right now. So how about if I bring up your presentation that you sent me?
Please.
Okay. It's opening. Okay, see it?
No, I still see your Word document.
Should be coming up.
Hillary, if you have more than one screen, it might be.
Yeah, no, it's
Or if you want, Hillary, at the bottom center of your screen, you should be able to let everyone share, which is the only option you'd have, and then he would be able to share
right.
his screen.
Can you see it yet? It says I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, yes, now I see the
Okay. All right.
I don't know if you could I don't know if you could make it a little larger on your screen. It might help people see.
Now that's as big as it can get.
Okay.
Hillary, is there anyone here who lives at Falls Ridge or Hilltop?
Anybody? Nope, apparently not.
Okay, I have one other preliminary question.
Mm-hmm.
How many people at Falls Ridge and Hilltop received notices from the applicant? I understand the 250 feet. I'm asking a different question. How many households? The applicant must know the answer to that.
I would have to look at the list. I mean, the number of total properties we served the formal notice to was 76, I believe, per the Planning Commission, and that included a good number of the houses that would be right behind us, and that certainly also included Falls Ridge right across from us. What happens is
the senior building when you say Falls Ridge. Falls Ridge is 135 units going up the hill, including the senior building, which is 50 units. And that's why I'm asking. Some of those are homeowners, not including Hilltop. There are at least 25 homeowners in that section, in addition to those at Hilltop. Regardless of what the city says, I think those people all should have had notice. All 135 units. Wasn't a big deal to do that. And given the impact this has potentially on the 135 units, I think they deserve notice. So I know that's not the law, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I am happy to provide the list of addresses to which we
Go
sent.
ahead.
As should the lofts at Falls Ridge, which is directly across the street. It's apartments, but it is directly across the street.
So the lofts at Falls Ridge definitely was served. What happens there is it is served to any apartment building, and the building owner is required by law to post it in their public meeting place. However, that is located inside their building so that all apartment dwellers are capable of seeing it and getting the information.
Okay, well, that means even fewer people at the Falls Ridge site itself, the 135 units that are controlled by PHA minus the ones that are owned by people. That means even fewer of them got notice. And I suppose 50 of those people, if you're counting those units, were in the senior building where it got posted. So it's practically nobody at the original Falls Ridge site, none of the houses, except for maybe a few of the people at Hilltop. I think that's very unfair.
Meg, I'm very happy to share I'm very happy to share the list of addresses with whom it was served, Hillary, with you afterwards, and so that you can see every
My
address.
point is, it's too late. Those people don't know, and we're supposed to take a vote tonight and decide what to do? I don't think so. I think that's terribly unfair. They live there, we don't.
I would like to move this forward, please. They put out the required notices, and if there's a failure within the institutions that receive the notices to distribute that information, I don't think we can be accountable for that.
It's not a question of accountability, Hillary. It's a question of basic fairness. This has racial overtones and undertones and a few other things, and I just think that it needs to be addressed head on. This is just not an appropriate way to handle this. That community was built with a certain design and a certain intent, and with certain expectations, which are part of a contract, and some of those people aren't at the table. You have every, quote, legal right to proceed. And I am not taking you to task, but I am saying this process is lacking in fairness. And to me, that's what's important.
Sean, when did those notices go out? That was 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I could give you the exact date if you like, but yes, approximately 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5.
Did everyone in the townhomes get the notices?
I believe so. We sent it to, I only received,
When you say townhomes, Hillary, which homes do you mean?
The new homes, next to Undyne.
yes.
Downbridge Avenue?
Okay. All
No,
right.
I served the homes up behind us with the notices, up the homes that would be behind the new proposed project with the notices. The only 2 notices I got returned undeliverable were both on Ridge Avenue, 4300 and 4436 Ridge. Everything else was delivered.
Mhm. Approximately how many addresses were delivered? About 100?
I think it was some along the order of 70 to 75, but I don't have the number up in front of me.
Oh,
Some
we
of
asked the original, Meg, asked the original question, who of those folks who were served are actually here tonight on this call?
Hillary, I put that question in the chat. Maybe we could ask if people would, if you know how to use your chat feature, just if you got a notice, indicate. And I think The point will be made, and obviously the zoning board will take that into consideration when they make a decision if there's no one or very few people on this call who received a notice, because I can't imagine if folks got the notice that they didn't, you know, want to attend.
If they were able to attend.
Right. If they were able.
Because
So
a
we
lot
have
of-
one, we have one person indicating, but I think, I would say, I think the point has been made that there is question about whether or not, whether it legally, notices met the legal requirement, but do we think it sort of met the fairness standard? My guess is that everyone on zoning understands the point. And thus far, only one person has responded on this call that they received a notice. So I think that supports your point, Meg.
Thank you.
All right. Hillary, would you like me to proceed?
I am just a little bit stumped because, you know, I think the insinuation here is that you mailed to what you felt was the requirement per the zoning code.
No, it's Corin Weiss here. The applicant received a list from Planning Commission, and I would assume Sean served that the addresses which were on the list. He's saying there were 75 addresses that the Planning Commission and the city told him how to get flyers. Beyond that, the applicant wouldn't have a requirement. But we surely could have required him to do it. We could have maybe discussed it and noticed anybody else that we thought was a stakeholder. But yeah, he gets a list of addresses, a specific list.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I'm saying that as a point of fundamental fairness, given the impact and on that community and our total community, and given the radical departure from what the entire community with a whole lot of different parties proposed to have on that site, that not to involve the entire Falls Ridge and Hilltop at Falls Ridge community is just unacceptable. And given that you're not about to break ground tomorrow, I would suggest that this need not be decided now and that it could be postponed at zoning. There's a fundamental problem with COVID and convening people. And to go forward on this, taking advantage effectively of that fundamental problem of giving notice effectively to the involved people and convening them where they can see what's going on. To me, it's just not right. And at the very least, those people ought to all have actual notice.
Okay.
At their
Meg,
door.
I very much appreciate your point of view and the points that have been made here. However, as have been stated, there's been nothing hidden about this project. We have proceeded. We've served all the formal notice. Both the first meeting that we attended was formally noticed on the EFCC website for more than 2 weeks in advance of that meeting in January, as was this meeting formally noticed on the EFCC website. We served all the formal notices that were required. That's already been confirmed by the city. So while I appreciate the opinion that more people
could all that, Sean.
possibly know,
Okay, so
I have an objection to this. I think the chair should take control of the meeting. There's been a single objection. It's been made over and over and over again, and it's already 20 minutes into the meeting, and we've heard one objection repeatedly.
thank you. Yeah, I would like to proceed with the meeting and the presentation.
Okay, Hillary, for the record, I agree with Meg, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't make this the focus of another meeting a week or two from now at night, where we talk just about this and make sure that somebody up the hill who spent $300,000 on a house thinking there were going to be 30 units on this property, but now is going to look out at 188 units, whether that person is thoroughly noticed about the meeting, which, again, I don't think that the prospective developers did anything legally wrong, but in terms of fairness, in terms to that property owner across the street who didn't get a notice, I think that's wrong. If I had spent $300,000,
Excuse me, Hillary, may I speak for the owner, please?
Sure.
David, that's all right. David,
the community.
So Hillary, I would like to make a point, which is that this is not a radical departure from the planning that happened through numerous meetings with the Planning Commission, where they first did the lower northwest plan and recommended that site be zoned CMX 3. And then we went through a zoning process where it was zoned CMX 3. There is no expectation of 30 units, and it was a full-blown community process that happened.
Actually,
And
there is
this
a
process-
legal obligation and an expectation of 30 units. There
No,
is a
there is
contract.
There is no obligation. There is no.
All right.
contract.
Bill
But
has seen it.
I've seen it too, and I've seen the alleged paperwork, and it doesn't exist.
Hillary,
But I'll tell you one thing, that zoning is CMX 3, and that is not limited, and that went through a community process. where there was
Hillary,
a
I think I can
and
move
hearing.
us forward if you want
Yeah,
to.
look, let me just tell you, we are going to move forward. Let me tell you that there is no community census right now. Between 30 market rate rental units, there is no community census. That a high density development is the correct development. My sense is that the community here is culpable for not distributing the information, because you have distributed the information that city planning gave to you. So that if there is a delay, I think that would be on us, and it would be up to us to communicate out to the larger community. And I think it exactly shows that those developments up there on the old School 4 site are not enmeshed in the community. It's hard for them to participate. There is a zoning website. There's Next Door East Falls. The letters were distributed very close to the borders and within that community. And there are ways for word to get out if people have concerns. When something big comes up like this, word gets around and people show up. And my opinion, I'm doubting that you're going to get a huge uptick in participation. That's my personal opinion. So I would like to move forward here with this presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Hillary. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone's viewpoints to date. Again, my name is Sean Whalen. I know I've recognized a number of names from last month. I am the developer's attorney for this project. We also have Michael Brawler from Umbra Architects, whom you will hear present the case predominantly. And on the call, we have Dan Spitzen and David Polonsky from the developer, so we can answer any and all questions that the neighborhood might have, because it is very important to us that you have your answers to the questions that you have, and that we present this in a very public manner. We're very proud of this project, and this project took a long time in developing it to try to make what we believe to be a contextual, appropriate, construction here that won't be overburdensome on the neighborhood and overbearing along Ridge. So with that, I would just start quickly. And I know it's been mentioned a little bit, but I think the purpose of tonight's meeting is very important. So I'll just address that again. This project, because of its size, this is about an approximately 82,000 square foot site. It is an enormous site at the corner of Ridge and Merrick. It's a trapezoidally shaped property. Our property line does not go all the way back up to the rear property line of the townhomes behind us at the top of the hill. There's approximately 75 to 100 feet in between their rear property lines and our rear property lines. So we are significantly downhill from those properties. And, we have approximately 400 feet along Ridge as frontage and approximately 200 feet or so along Merrick as frontage. So, we recognize that this is a seminal property and project along the waterfront and this Ridge corridor. We are proposing 185 units. Along with that, we are proposing 189 parking spaces. You'll hear Michael detail the trouble we went through to make sure we got as much parking as possible. That's more than 3 times the amount of parking required by the zoning code. So we're doing as much as we can there to maximize the number of parking spaces, knowing that would be an issue. We also have a significant 4,700 square feet of commercial going in along Ridge at the ground floor. Hopefully, we do not know, because I don't think anyone knows which retailers will be around or thriving at this time. In about 18 to 24 months, we will be in a position to actually be filling that space. What you'll see is we have another 2,000 square feet under an overhang, so we can really activate the extensive sidewalk there for a sidewalk cafe or a coffee shop or something that would really benefit some pedestrian activity here. So the issue is that because of the size and scope of this project, we have to proceed before the Civic Design Review Committee. That is a subcommittee of the City Planning Commission. We are intending, the final agenda is not yet set. The Planning Commission determines that on their own. But we have submitted and are waiting for confirmation that we will be on the March 2nd CDR agenda, at which time we will present to that body and they will give us further direction, hopefully, in line with what the community thinks and wants, and we can, continue to revise this project to make it even better than we think it is now. Secondly, we will be proceeding in April before the zoning board, and that we have 2 variances. The 2 variances we have are one, we have 1 loading space instead of 2. Those loading spaces are not your traditional loading space for a car or an Uber or Amazon package delivery. Because this project is, as it was mentioned, CMX3. CMX3, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, is considered heavy commercial use. It allows for significant density, unlimited height. And so we are required basically to have 2 loading spaces that could fit a 60-foot big rig. There will be no truck traffic like that coming to the property. Absolutely not. That's not the way this project is developed. It's actually prohibited in our leases for large trucks to come to do any kind of deliveries. So we have 1 oversized loading space to take advantage of getting all the Amazon and FedEx and Ubers and Grubhub and all those sorts of delivery vehicles off the street so that we're not congesting anything. And the only other variance we have is there is a small strip that basically runs right through the center of the property parallel to Ridge Avenue of steep slopes that are over 25% grade. Those were man-made when there used to be a PHA project here. And since we are disturbing those, we need a variance for that as well. So that's the process of why we're here. I understand that there's also some assertions by some members of the community that there is a 20-plus-year-old agreement with PHA to limit this to 30 homes. That's going to be a legal determination. That's not the purpose of our meeting tonight, and I'm sure that there will be ample time for everyone to argue their positions on that. So we're going to, not address that now. This project sits on this property, which is, again, about 80,000 square feet. In the last 10 or 12 years or so, the community process undertaken with the councilmen and significant, community input developed a lower northwest plan, kind of a master plan for the entirety of East Falls and Manayunk and Roxborough. That's through the Planning Commission. And as part of that process, there was then a very public process to upzone this, actually to allow greater development density height at CMX3. So, in order to not belabor any points, I will turn this over to Michael to help describe the actual details of the project so that you can start to see it. So, Michael, if you could unmute yourself, and I will step aside.
I think I am unmuted. Everybody hear me okay?
Very good.
Okay, great. I'm going to skip ahead in our show here because Sean kind of hit a lot of those high points, and a lot of this information you folks know better than I. So the site here, the aerial, just to give you a sense where it is. Again, like was mentioned, these are the next slide here is really just giving you a sense of what's in the vicinity, either under construction or built. Some site images here. You can keep moving, Mr. Longer, if you want to. And then getting to slide 6, I guess, maybe to kind of give an overview, and kind of the concept for the building is to kind of embrace the site. The site is along Merrick, a difference in elevation of over 20 feet. It's even more than that further into the site. So the solution for the project is to step the building up Merrick and nestle kind of the longer building into the trees. Preserve as much as we can along Ridge, that soft edge, knowing, I guess further west of the Mass. Yes, thank you, exactly right there. Softening that edge, knowing that any kind of further development beyond us, beyond as you get closer to the on-ramps, is a little difficult. So as opposed to doing a wall along Ridge, the idea is to, in a concept, is to kind of step the building up Merrick and kind of nestle the longer building into the hill and to preserve as much of that soft edge as possible. You can move on if you want, Mr. Longer, but that's the high point. I'm sorry, I apologize. Can you go back one? Sorry. The one thing as well is just as a kind of major access to the project, as described by Sean, is the corner retail on the corner of Merrick and Ridge, but also all the way up as it becomes more residential along Merrick. The residential entry happens about 2/3 of the way up Merrick on our property. And before that, there is a bike room, knowing with the Schuylkill River Trail being there, that hopefully is a big draw. We're providing the minimum you need for zoning, but the hope is that that takes off and that we really, provide more than that. So the idea is to kind of get the entry in the more residential portion as you go up Ridge, where it starts to turn into twins on the other side. And then as you get up beyond that, the development that was in question that we were talking about earlier today. Thank you. I guess maybe, Mr. Longer, you could really just skip to maybe slide 11 to kind of talk about the landscape plan a little bit. We have a landscape plan, and this is just to really kind of illustrate the thought and hopeful consideration of the soft edge along Ridge. And then the next slide, Mr. Longer, is kind of a clip from the master plan that was done by the East Falls Development Corporation, as far as what that edge could be and what we'd be embracing and having conversations with. Sean mentioned about the 2,000 square foot outdoor space in the retail. We hope and imagine that to be a cafe space It's a lot of space, so it could be subdivided. The idea is to provide some activation along that edge as well, and to take advantage of the parking, the public parking that they're providing across the way, or what they're proposing on the south side of Ridge. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. The next slide kind of gives you a sense of the aesthetic of what was in the vision plan that I mentioned, the master plan, is that along that edge is kind of more of a, not a manicured landscape idea, but more of a naturalized, more similar to what's there actually. So we really like that idea of something a little bit more wild and soft. And then the next few pages in the document here are really, again, this is the commercial space on the corner, where we hope to include not only the bike racks up the way, which is enclosed for what you need for zoning, but also think about some additional bike racks along there, a furnishing zone of tables and chairs and benches. And again, that's working with the folks who are doing the master plan. And then the next couple of drawings here are floor plans. I'm sorry. Yeah, can you go to 15, Mr. Longer? Thank you. Right, this is the next level up. The site slopes so much that really the only thing that exists on the first level is that first level commercial space and egress for a stair. And this is the first level up, which is essentially the level of the parking entry in the residential lobby. The entry to the parking, that's coincident with the Palisades lane across the way. So the hope is that there's a real reason and a rational thought to how traffic would work along that way as well.
Michael, let me just jump in there because it's a good place and something I forgot to point out. The purposeful decision here with regard to traffic was all traffic will be coming in and out of Merrick Road. All ingress and egress to our project will be off of Merrick Road, just actually south of where the residential aspect and townhomes kind of start to take hold as you go up Merrick. The purpose for that was we decided not to include any kind of ingress or egress off of Ridge because that sort of open entrance and exit off of Ridge could really further snarl up traffic along Ridge. So instead, we determined that we would put everything off of Merrick. Since there is a light there, we will be working with Streets Department to improve the light and the pedestrian access and everything about that intersection in total. But the thought being that from a traffic perspective, the light would naturally meter traffic in and off of Ridge for this project so that you didn't just have, all of the cars getting dumped right into the flow on Ridge. So sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, that's great. Thank you. And perhaps Mr. Longer, the next page is really just shows all plans, and it's really just in there if we need to talk about them, if there's any questions concerning how the building functions, and those are in there too. Slide 17 starts to discuss, and this is a section along Ridge looking west, right? The Falls Bridge lofts there on the left-hand side. Somebody told me once, it's like embrace the site, like don't kind of, not the site you want it to be, but you embrace the site. And that's kind of stuck with me throughout my career. So as opposed to coming in and just basically making a man-made object out of all this, right? The idea of stepping it down was kind of something that developed over time working with the owner, and we're kind of excited about it. And this is kind of just a better sense of how that works. And by the time you get down to Ridge, you're talking about a 5-story building, for residential over commercial. We think, we hope that that's kind of a sensitive intervention in the neighborhood. The next slide is a section cut through Merrick.
Again, just before we go off that slide, Hillary, I think this slide indicates well. So our rear property line is basically where you see the slope start to go back up the hill. Again, the townhomes at the top of the hill are about 100 feet up the hill from us. So we're keeping all of that existing dense foliage and old growth trees up there. And all of that will be taller than our proposed building. So our proposed building will not be looming over the houses up behind us, but would rather, will be visible through the trees in the wintertime, but otherwise when the trees are full, those houses wouldn't be able to see our building, and we would be below the existing tree line. So.
Yeah, and to that end, if we looked at a shadow study as well, and at no time does anything come close to actually the tree line. We're not taller than the tree line, so the tree line is actually creates more shadow than we do. And granted, there is a difference between tree shadow and building shadow, but we're not close to them in that regard. Great. The next slide, this is a section along Ridge Road looking south. And again, to kind of give you a sense of its relationship to Falls Ridge, the 50 unit on our left-hand side there, to give you a sense of where we end up as we get down the hill. As we talked about last time, we went back and looked at what the folks were doing in the neighborhood, but also, of course, the kind of the existing context, not just really the context to come. And we think just in general that what we feel is a very kind of simple move is to kind of let the site kind of make the building rather than almost disingenuously put another layer of information on the building. So we looked at this and we looked at the context in the next slide as well, which we went back a little farther as well, right, to some historical photos. And just to get a sense really of scale of articulation, really solid void as far as windows, how much wall there is to windows, those kind of things. Those things are really helpful for us to kind of become more familiar with the site. The next slide, obviously, the Falls Bridge is just an amazing, that's a historical photograph from 1895. We love it. What we love about it is the fact that it reads as one object, but it has kind of almost, it has a secondary reading at the pedestrian level where you start to see the plates and the rivets and the almost handmade kind of quality. We're in love with it and love all things like that. So we took inspiration from that. We took inspiration not so much from our immediate to come neighbors, but we think the stepping up the hill is something that happens on Calumet. It happens on the street, on Stanton Street, a little bit more to the east of that. So we're just kind of excited about doing something sensitive and doing something that feels that has a second layer of kind of detail to it. And it's very hard to kind of represent. One thing I'll say is, it's very hard to represent what our intention is for the exterior wall material because, and it's kind of a good thing because it looks different in different lights. What we're proposing is a zinc seamed panel, and what's really cool about it is that it's going to look different in the morning. It's going to look different in raking light. It's going to look different on a cloudy day. We think it has some real life and vitality to it. We tried as best we could to represent it in the renderings. Sometimes it comes off too dark because that's the theming, but we're looking at kind of a lighter zinc color as well. On 23, I might be kind of repeating myself. I apologize for that. This just shows the soft edge along Ridge, of course, and then the activation of the corner with the retail, and then the building kind of sits into the hill, kind of very similar to one of the historical precedents that we grabbed off the internet as well. Sure, this one you've seen before, of course. I don't want to repeat myself, but corner retail halfway up the street, bike room to activate that length, and then the entry off of Merrick near Palisades. Another view on Merrick. This is looking directly across the parking lot behind the apartment building, there where the senior housing is, where some of it is, to give you a sense. The rest of these are boring black and white elevations, but that's about. I tried to keep it short. I tried to run quickly, but that's what we got.
That's excellent. Thank you, Michael. And I just wanted to jump in. There was one other thing that neither Michael nor I touched on, but I think it warrants very seriously being discussed. And I know it's going to come up, right? What are the rents and what's the average, the square footage of the units? This is actually a terrific question from someone in the chat asking about hearing what were our thoughts pre and post COVID. And what concerns and thoughts went into this, and is this really a viable post-COVID building? Obviously, since we've gotten this far, or maybe not obviously, we certainly believe that this is absolutely and fundamentally going to be a project that people are going to hopefully love going forward for a long time. However, pre-COVID, as I mentioned before, this site has sort of unlimited height and really could allow for huge amounts of density, up to or over 400 units. And with COVID and trying to space things, we have much larger units. So the units range from studios up to a small percentage of studios up through 2 bedrooms. So we're really trying to get a large swath of a tenant base here, not angling for any singular type of tenant. The average square footage is very large for a building of this size and what's being built right now at just over 700 square feet per unit. Obviously with some being much larger than that, but even the studios are very large for studios, and the developers can get into that. And the rents are, obviously our intended rents at this time are in the low 1,000s up through to about the mid 2,000s based on location and building and size of unit. Some of the, really nice 2 beds on the top floor have their own roof decks, so those would obviously be more. And what we were trying to anchor here is these units will be at approximately ranging from about 80% AMI up through 100% AMI. So these would fall certainly at the 80% AMI squarely in what's considered workforce housing. So I hope I answered the question about, from the chat. And Michael, I see another question in the chat, which will be with regard to sustainability. So if you want to describe, and just before I go to you, Michael, I'll take the next one. Someone just asked if there will be a traffic study. So at this time, our project does not trigger a required traffic study. The streets department may require us to do a traffic study. That's in their discretion. That has not been determined yet. However, because we knew that this would be such an important issue, we went to, we have reached out to a traffic engineer, and the traffic engineer has done recent studies in this area and is familiar with the neighborhood and familiar with Ridge. And it is of the opinion and maybe coming with a formal study that the Ridge corridor where we are will not be downgraded in any way from the addition of our units. And I apologize. A question came in when I was describing AMI and workforce housing. AMI is adjusted median income. And so 100% AMI is sort of at 100% of what the adjusted median income is for this neighborhood. And they do that and run that for 1 person, 2 people, 3 people and upwards per dwelling unit. And workforce housing is really focused at again, the same sort of thing. It basically ties to AMI. Are people who are normal, everyday people who wake up and go to a job and come home able to afford these units? And specifically, yes, and that's who we're targeting. And obviously, everyone knows, the wonderful benefits and location of this neighborhood. And, we've already talked about the river and the bikeability and the walkability. But obviously, you can easily get out to, suburban office spaces. You can easily get into Center City. And so we wanted to be able to attract, those workers who are having jobs and getting up and going there throughout the day. I don't know if our engineer is on, but what we are doing with regard to steep slopes,
I'm on, Sean.
Yep. Oh, Ron. Okay, you are on. So there's a question in the chat with regard to the removal of steep slopes, and basically what we're doing, and what I think Michael described already, is instead of coming in, and oftentimes what developers do is they just come in and they level out the whole site. They just dig up everything and try to make it as level as possible. What we tried to do, and what Michael and Ronald from the engineer did so well, is, I don't know if people can see me, but they kind of stacked it like plates, the property up like plates along the property to go back into that significant hillside that's coming up behind us. Because again, there's a 20 to 25 foot difference between the front of the property and the rear of the property. So, just going in and clearing that out to one level certainly doesn't make any sense. And that was not what we were hoping to do or do anything of. We will have, obviously all the reports necessary, and, our engineer will provide all the analysis necessary to make sure that we have a huge stormwater management system going in here that'll be underneath the extensive parking to make sure that we're capturing all of the issues. And again, the steep slopes were actually created by PHA back, 30 years ago or whenever they built the original buildings. So we'll be removing those, but it will not be. We try to be as cognizant as possible of stepping back into the slope and with the slope. So I know I skipped over something because I see these questions coming up in the chat. Michael, can you discuss the sustainability aspects included in the design?
Sean,
Sure, Hillary.
I'd like to, can you see my screen share right now on the agenda?
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay. Well, I'd like to organize the discussion here and just keep it to specific subjects.
Of course, I apologize. Go ahead.
Not the chats as they come in. So I'd like to invite everybody to talk about site density and traffic congestion. And what did just pop out to me a moment ago when you were speaking was that despite the fact you have projected 190 cars on site, that you're not going to be contributing to congestion or raise the level of service on the road in any way. I was somewhat surprised by that because, that's 200 cars. And we are a commuter hub, whether it's by train, bus, or car, or bike. So that's a tough number to believe. And was that verified by a traffic study?
Yes. So maybe I could be more clear about that. I'm not a traffic engineer, but as it was explained to me, there are traffic is put into bands. And so, it's not like one car creates more of an issue and one car less creates less of an issue. There are bands of number of trips in a given area. And if you have, between this number and that number of trips, you're in this band, and then, so on, you go up in escalation. The traffic engineer that we spoke with and are reaching out to work with said that he had done very recently in pre and post COVID traffic studies in this area and all along Ridge. And he was certain that our development as proposed would not remove us from one band to a lower band. So we would stay in the band of, traffic. Basically, if you think of, he said it as grades. So if you think of like, a grade A means you're flying along and there's no traffic whatsoever. He said if Ridge right now is a C,
Right.
we would stay a C. We would not downgrade to a D. is a way to think of it.
Sure. What's going to happen when all the other developments are being constructed at the same time as your development and everyone's contributing 100 plus cars? I don't think the traffic issue can be looked at in isolation from just your project, because there's 4 other projects that are, under construction that are going to be contributing to the overall malaise. And it's been discussed before that it is actually the traffic congestion that's inhibiting retail development, because you can't park anywhere on the ridge. It's not like you can get out and pick up a sandwich or,
Exactly. Right.
Right. So Hillary, that's an excellent point, and one that we should have addressed. I appreciate you bringing us back to that. We expect significant activation of our retail space from a number of areas. One, we have parking all in front of our building up Merrick. We also, on-street parking, we also have approximately 17 parking spaces directly in front of our building along Ridge. And none of those have been used any time that we've been out to the property. There is also the Howe Group that is developing the unit sort of at the western end of our property, right across the street. On the other side of Ridge is, as part of that project, redeveloping a 30 parking space city metered lot. So we will basically have in excess of probably 45 to 50 spaces immediately located near our commercial space. We also highly anticipate that our commercial space will be significantly utilized by the extensive bike traffic, not only during the day, but certainly as everyone there knows, along the weekends, there's extensive bike traffic up and down this corridor. And so we do believe that will activate the retail.
The bike traffic really is confined to Kelly. You won't find any bicycles on Ridge. So it is kind of a little remote from this location.
Hillary, there's a few folks who want to make a comment who've mentioned in the chat. I have something I'd like to say, and I think our representative wanted to say something with regard to traffic and congestion. I want to see an actual study, a traffic study. What you were telling me that the individual told you about how it wouldn't change whatever zone we're in for traffic. Traffic is already a big problem along Ridge. It's a huge problem. And it's a problem even now, and we have what percentage of our community that's not commuting on a daily basis. So what happens when the pandemic's over and some people go back to work on a regular basis? You're adding a surplus of additional vehicles. You mentioned that the entrance was off of Merrick, but they can't get to Merrick without coming from Ridge. So it's still creating congestion on Ridge. It's very problematic.
Cars don't move down on that street on Ridge Avenue in the morning. I mean, cars literally sit there. To get over the other side of the river takes an hour.
Yes.
So you add 2 more cars or 3 more cars or 10 more cars.
Yes.
It just adds to the congestion down there. People just sit and sit and sit. Like, traffic does not move in East Falls. And that's the reason why the business corridor doesn't make it, because you can't get to a business. It's not convenient. People, this is the era of the convenience and stuff like that. So, you telling us that 200 cars isn't going to affect our traffic. When Merrick Road, the way the lights are timed now, I can only imagine if that light's just a little bit longer, Ridge Avenue is not going to move, period. So, you know, the light's a quick light now. What happens when that light's got 10, 15 cars coming out of it, you know, and they adjust it for your property, then Ridge Avenue's not moving in either direction. You got to realize something, Sean, that our traffic on Ridge Avenue it's East Falls, it's Roxborough, it's Manayunk, it's Chestnut Hill, it's Mount Airy. It's all these areas that open up and go out. That's what Ridge Avenue is. It's to get from point A to point B, not to gawk or sightsee or shop or nothing like that. That's the problem with Ridge Avenue. Mm-hmm. It's a single lane street going east and west. So, you know, you telling us that you're going to put 200 cars there and it's not going to change the grade from A to C. The grade down there is a Z. I'm sorry, but you know what? Come out. Seriously, you know, everybody's laughing, but you know what? Come out at 8 o'clock in the morning post-COVID, and I guarantee I'll sit there and have coffee with you in your car, and we're not going to move. That's the nature of East Falls, and people like you come into Falls, you know, and what they're doing in Manayunk, and I just drove up Ridge Avenue today. I couldn't believe that they're adding more apartments. So now, once again, you have all those people that have to outlet on Ridge Avenue right in that little corridor right there. That's their outlet. So adding one car or two cars, that's not helping our situation, you know, and then changing the traffic pattern, that's going to make it even worse. Now, if you wanted to and gave us another lane of traffic on your property that would give us so that we can move, you know, that's what everybody should do, is lend us a little bit of roadway. If we had 2 lanes on Ridge Avenue going both ways, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right here.
Yeah, I think we're being pushed into a traffic congestion corner. It's like we're going to have all this development, all this congestion, and what do? It's like, is the developer going to do anything about it? Can we do anything about it? We can't. All we can say is we're congested. So, you know, there has to be some kind of like out to the congestion that's coming. The Falls Bridge is going to be closed for a couple of years for reconstruction. West River Drive may not open again for a while. It may stay closed for COVID for another year or two. So, you know, this is really going to be a problem here. And it's like we're going to be left with the congestion with no solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, based on what you just said, Hillary, I have to agree, and what you, Emily, and Bruce said. I received several text messages from a neighbor that's on the top of the hill, and she's extremely upset and livid the fact that this is going on the bottom and that she has not been notified. And you're talking to a state representative who frequently has been traveling those roads, and I travel it at least about twice a week. And I literally now had to change my schedule on where I have my appointment, because now it takes me longer to try to get a parking space when you have the buses coming down. Now you have even up the upper end of Ridge Avenue, when you pass the trolley car downer, that road is blocked off because they're doing construction up there. So you have that part of Ridge that you have construction, and then you have that's the thing that they're going to add on additional. It's too much cluster. It's just too much, nowhere for individuals to go based on what Bruce is saying. So I think you need to do a better job with the developers, need to notify the neighbors, and that's why there weren't as many individuals on the call. The traffic study, I think that person needs to come before the group, because right now, just to hear, it doesn't sound like it makes sense, considering based on this project. Just my opinion. Considering I frequent the road a lot, I can't see the additional traffic.
Yeah, I just saw a little question in the chat. The Grasso project is introducing a turn lane, which is very much needed onto from Ridge onto Kelly across the bridge. It will allow, I think, about 10 to 11 cars to filter off Ridge Avenue to make that turn. But it certainly contributes, but it's small. It's needed and it helps, but it's not going to stop the kind of level of congestion that we know is coming. We need a ton of fixes like that. We need more than just that one little fix. And as you know, we don't have the roadway width in which to do that.
You say 10 to 11 cars is that at one time, or can you explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, no, there's a turn lane is developed on Ridge Avenue, which I think is about 3 or 4 car lengths. They have a wide radius turn as you turn right there, going to the bridge, and then you have then two lanes queuing up for the bridge where you can then turn right or go straight across. So it's a help, but it's not it's not going to solve all the problems.
That's not going to solve any problem, Hillary. I mean, if you think about it, it shortens that little stretch right there on Calumet, between Ridge and Kelly Drive. So by shortening that, now it's just one less car that could sit in that space right there, or 2 less cars. You know what I mean? So that's going to be irrelevant in our neighborhood. That's not helping traffic one iota. No.
Hillary?
Yeah, Carolyn, I did make the point that there is an extra lane on Ridge.
I know, yeah, okay. And that's
it's not for the length of this project. It's just, it's a
turning lane. It's a turning lane during rush hour, and it converts to on-street parking later in the day. That's all, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we have any other comments on traffic and density? Okay. Let's move on. Let's try and get through this. It's a commonly held belief that you need a lot of people living, in a project in an area to spur retail development. And certainly we have our streets, Eveline, Stanton, Calumet, Indian Queen Lane. All our streets we're pretty dense. Mostly we walk down to retail. But we still have trouble supporting retail. There are all the new Dobson Mills apartments, and I believe there's some flourishing retail there, but I think there are maybe 50% occupancy right now. So I'm kind of curious, are we just going to be a coffee shop destination? Is this what developers are thinking when they're developing retail in East Falls?
Well, I think I can address that. So we have 4,700 to 4,800 square feet of retail. We thought, obviously, again, nobody knows what retail is now, let alone what the future of retail holds 2 years from now. So we do not have a retailer already lined up. We do not have multiple retailers lined up or leases signed or anything of that sort. It is our intention to have, to fill that retail space and make it an active retail usage when the time comes. And we do believe very strongly, that's why we included it, that the project and this area can support it. We believe we'll have as I already described, the car traffic availability for those quick, convenient trips. I couldn't agree more that everything for retail now is about car convenience. But I do also think that if you have a good cafe or something of that sort right along, 1 block off Kelly, you can get a lot of traffic, bike traffic coming up, for people who are going along. I know Conrad Brewing Company does that and does a significant amount of business with just bike traffic. So we do, we do foresee filling that space. Again, it could be divided up, so there could be some local retailers going in there. This is not going to be a national retail chain, certainly not in this space. But
is it going to be designed for food cooking, which would require, mechanical going through the buildings up to the roof, or is it just going to be retail light?
So right now it's unknown. It's being proposed as vacant retail. So anything that would require a variance or special exception or any other kind of relief for the commercial use will have to come back before this group, if and when that's proposed. But and we certainly know when we've done the studies about, how there's been a long-standing issue with getting retail to stick, and certainly down at this end of Ridge. So this is aspirational, but there are a lot of people going in these new developments, and we do think that that's going to bring people there, and anyone who then is going there and going to this retail, like I said, whatever the retail is, will have to be approved at that time based on the needs of that group.
Would it be fair to say that the kind of the level of retail in the development is the numbers have been worked that it can stay empty because you're still going to have to be able to survive, manage the building just based on the apartment buildings above?
Yeah, Hillary, let me interject for a second here. I understand.
Dan, just introduce yourself first.
I'm sorry. This is Dan Spitzen. I'm with the developer at Tapco. There's a number of factors that went into the programming of that space for us. I mean, as Michael very eloquently put it, we really designed this building to kind of fit onto that site as best we can, and we put a lot of thought into how we programmed and designed not just the building, but just the layout of the building on the site. One of the restrictions that we actually had to play into, though, is the existing zoning. The existing zoning requires retail on Ridge Avenue. And that's it's a special overlay in this area that is not necessarily typical for a project that's zoned this way. This is a CMX3 zoning, and it was pointed out that was upzoned. I don't know exactly what the time frame was a few years ago. And the previous zoning was CMX 2.5, which actually requires even more retail. But in the CMX3 zone, you do not have to have retail, but there's an overlay that does require it. We actually designed the building. We really wanted it to be up on the hill more than down on the street because of a lot of that congestion and density that you feel on the street when you have these, buildings that are make these long stretches. As Sean pointed out, we have 400 feet of frontage, and I don't think anyone wanted 400 feet of frontage along Ridge Avenue with a massive massing of a building. We tried to limit the amount of area that we touched onto Ridge that would obviously then require more retail. There is about 4,700 square feet of commercial space or available space on Ridge Avenue. Approximately half of that is what's required to be retail. That's what the zoning overlay requires. It's effectively 50% of anything you have on Ridge Avenue. It's a little bit more detailed than that, but that's the general expectation. So our expectation is a fairly minimal amount of retail. The Grosso project across the street, I think, is programming around 10,000 square feet. The Howe project across the street in the other direction, similar amount of square footage. I frankly believe that this area, while, as Sean pointed out, none of us can predict exactly what's going to be going into here in a couple of years when we actually have the space and is available to deliver. We have gotten feedback from some retailers that they do like the space. But the big difference, and I saw in the chat that there's existing vacancy in the retail. The retail that exists on Ridge Avenue in East Falls along Ridge in this stretch right now it's just older building stock, and it doesn't really conform to current retail standards. The new buildings that are going up, the Grosso project, the Howe project, our project, the retail will conform to the expectations of, sort of current retail demand. And I do believe, obviously, to be determined, and the state of the world in a couple of years is obviously going to be a big factor in this, though, that when the Grosso project, the Howe project, and our project, it will liven up this part of Ridge, which currently doesn't have much activity other than, Bruce, as you pointed out, there's traffic and cars driving, but, the work that we're doing to the sidewalks, the existence of, additional or new structures that will add life, light, and energy to this part of Ridge. I believe there will be a retailer that will want to be in this space and will frankly be an amenity to both the residents of our building as well as the residents of the community.
Okay.
And I think too, Dan, just if I could say one thing, is that, we talked about the reality of retail and COVID right now and for the foreseeable future. And nobody wants an empty storefront right? So we talked about what else that could be almost developer sponsored, being like, is it a fitness center that is an amenity? Is there some kind of amenity space that works for the building that at least gets the lights on, that gets activity on that corner until it becomes determined kind of how retail shakes out, as we move forward past COVID or post-COVID. So I just want to say that.
Well, the building right next to you was never occupied by any retail ever in the last 20 years, except by a bank on the corner. And now, to keep the lights on, so to speak, it's their offices too. So, the retail never panned out in the building right next to you. So, much as your building, you are really, diving into the unknown, because I think there's so many factors that actually make retail happen, that I think are beyond just density analyses. And, I think, like we're all saying, it's like we've got a congestion problem, which makes just walking along the street an unpleasant experience. Maybe the streetscape handles that, can mitigate that, but we all know it's a problem. We've got vacancies, and this was before COVID, it's during COVID. It's just something that East Falls has never had a good retail experience along Ridge. Not in the 40 years I've lived here anyway. But look,
Hillary, I will just sort of respond to what you said, which is I don't necessarily disagree. This is not a retail driven project, as you can see. I mean, the size of this project, it's a fairly minimal offering of retail. We don't necessarily disagree, but we also believe that, if it is executed right on the small scale that we have, that it could help energize both the street and our project. So
right.
we're going in with our eyes clearly wide open in that regard. I don't think we would necessarily argue that much with what you said, although I do believe that it will be something that we can, offer as an amenity to the whole neighborhood.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Let's just move on, because we actually haven't talked about it a whole lot. And is the actual design and the connection with the river and the design and context of the building within the neighborhood. And, you made a lot of comments early on about, letting the site drive the design of the building and try not to go so layer it up the slope, almost create a kind of a Calumet stepped Stanton Street kind of experience as you go up the hill. But I think the feeling is that was expressed in the prior meeting and in emails since, is that you're actually not giving us a building that fits into the neighborhood. It does everything but fit in. It's got long roof lines that don't break down. It's one material that covers front, side, back, and base. It's a very uniform building that also doesn't look very residential, and certainly there's no element to it that says it's a building very close to the school.
Looks like it belongs on a college campus, Hillary. That's what it looks like. It doesn't belong in East Falls. It doesn't have any charm. East Falls is a charming neighborhood. It doesn't have charm. That building belongs in a college. Beautiful building. I agree, Michael. It's a beautiful building. Doesn't belong in East Falls, though. It belongs in a college campus, or, maybe Scottsdale, Arizona, but not East Falls, Philadelphia. It's just, drive through the neighborhood. Every picture you showed us of the neighborhood, every building had charm. Even the newer buildings had charm. Nothing on your building except for maybe the frontage, with the greenery and stuff, that had a little bit of charm to it. But other than that, I mean, maybe your parking lot does. I don't know, but the building sure as hell did.
Yeah, I mean, I I understand what you're saying. I appreciate the comment. I think the one thing that, it's not a building of charm. And I understand the
But our
precedent that we
neighborhood
took.
is. But our neighborhood is. Our neighborhood's a neighborhood of charm.
Okay, I understand that. I think the difference, at least the way we see it, is that it's about kind of the overall feel and the stepping, and the reason why as an example, the precedent that we showed on Calumet was more of a reading of home, right? The individual home. And this building is not so much about a singular home necessarily. It's just it's a different scale of project. I mean, you could see the other ones that are being done on the site on the 4300 Ridge. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just a different reading, and we appreciate the comment. But it's about what you're seeing there on Calumet. It's about the articulation of one single home. It's different. Everybody gets to do their own thing, right? It's awesome. I lived in a row home in South Philly for years. There's a point of pride with that, right? I know I'm not going to change your mind, Bruce, but the idea is that the thing, if you start to break it up, it actually draws more attention to it and draws more.
I'm not asking you to break anything up. I'm just asking for charm. I drive down 76, coming east down 76, and there's a building like right at the beginning of Manioc that's a brick building that's just going up. It's an apartment complex that's got charm to it. I've seen large buildings with charm. I'm not a young man. I've been around, so I've seen a lot of charm in large buildings. That is the college campus building right there. It's not a neighborhood building that you're putting in our neighborhood.
So Bruce, I'll jump in here because it's an excellent point, and this is the stuff that we want to hear from everybody. And if there's a consensus in the neighborhood as to sort of specific changes that we could make, just saying charm is a little difficult. But if there are specific changes or constructive criticisms that we could get from the community, kind of as a consensus, we'd be happy to try to incorporate those as much as possible. Obviously we presented what we thought would be the right contextual building for the site. And, if the community feels that maybe we missed the mark a little bit, then we're happy.
Maybe a lot of it, Sean. I'm sorry to say, but maybe I've been in the neighborhood for almost 40 years like Hillary. My wife's born and raised, her mother born and raised in the Falls. And I remember a time the bank on Midvale Avenue, the neighborhood basically dictated the colors that go in that building. I mean, that's just the way the neighborhood always was. Things didn't happen in the neighborhood without the neighborhood's permission. And like I said, that would never float in East Falls. It's just, there's no charm to that building whatsoever.
I was looking around. These are some housing developments. This one's actually proposed on the Delaware in north of
that's got charm to it,
downtown, but it's kind of broken up into a kind of residential scale, and this too is just another typical building close to a waterfront. So there's balconies, there's a place where you can look out at the view, and it's like there's just, you don't get that.
Right, exactly right.
It's just, sure, it's a nice building, and I think this is a nice material, but I don't think it says, this is a residential environment here.
Right. So what will it take? So I thought I heard there was potential compromise. What do you need to hear back from the community in order to engage the community in a thoughtful discussion of what it thinks might look better in terms of the project exterior? Because that's what we're talking about now. We can get to other parts of it, but what do you need to hear back from us?
Right. So I appreciate the comment because that's really helpful. And certainly I've done a lot of projects like this. And frequently what happens when a community gets together is, you have 30% say they want one thing, 30% say another thing, 30% want nothing, and 10% don't give an opinion. And so you're kind of left at this, how do I maximize or meet any of these demands? So if there are specific design criteria, as Bruce, you mentioned some of the colors or something like that, or balconies, those are specific design items that we can, take to heart and start to go back to, continue to work on the design. I mean, again, we're still a couple weeks from CDR. We can, continue to work with the community about these design items. I've heard.
I think, Sean, like Hillary said, like the building's just, the lines are just cut and dry. I mean, like, so those buildings that Hillary showed, they have a beauty to them. They have a charm to them. There's something different. Once again, you guys are doing your homework and everything like that. I see you drove through the neighborhood, but really drive through the neighborhood. You know what? Come over and spend the night in the neighborhood and drive through the neighborhood at night and stuff like that, and understand what our neighborhood is. It's always been that beauty, that charm. We're such a diverse neighborhood. We range anywhere from Section 8 housing to $1 million housing, $1 million houses here. But it's not a college campus. And that's what I'm trying to convey to you, is that you're trying to put a college campus building in a neighborhood that's got charm. And it just doesn't work. Like I personally, and I know 30 people are going to like this and 30 people are going to like that, but I guarantee that 100 people won't like what you're putting in our neighborhood. Okay? Like, I like the antique colors. I like the buildings broken up like Hillary just showed. You know what I mean? It's like, I like the way the lights showed that Hillary. You have a beautiful view of the river. I live in a development on Haywood Street that's called Schuylkill View. When the trees are out, I could sit on my deck and I could see the river. You're not offering any of your residents that opportunity because you got a square building. I mean, open it up and instead of putting 180 units, put 100 units in there and just make them beautiful and charge $3,000 a month. You know what I mean? Just make it more conducive with what the neighborhood looks like. Like I said, you guys did great homework, beautiful building. If it was a college campus or like I said, Scottsdale, Arizona, or wherever, beautiful building, absolutely gorgeous. Michael did a great job on that. I'm not going to say he didn't, but once again, it's not conducive with what the East Falls feelings are. Sean, real quick, a history. My father-in-law lived in East Falls for 70 years or 80 years, and he was considered an outsider. That's what Falls is about. Okay, that's what we want to see. We like that old charm. You know what I mean? I'm an outsider. My wife's a lifer. And that's just the old school in East Falls. And with the new people coming in, the reason why they're buying in this neighborhood is for that charm, for that neighborhood feeling. What you're doing is you're taking that neighborhood feeling right out of the neighborhood, basically, is what you're doing.
I'm just going to interject one thing, Bruce, and I appreciate everything that you have to say. And clearly, you live in the neighborhood, have lived in the neighborhood, and I don't live in the neighborhood. I've spent a lot of time in the neighborhood. I have a decent sense for what the neighborhood is about. And to your point, this does not conform exactly with the some of the elements of the neighborhood. Michael and his team have designed something that we do believe it's contextual. It does not necessarily mean that it fits to the T of exactly what's in the community. One of the things we focused on, and it was largely Michael's approach to, again, how we've designed and where the placement of the property. Not only did we put the building sort of set back off the street because we didn't want to create that sort of ominous corridor down Ridge, but we also wanted it up on the hill to accentuate those views over the buildings across the street, so that there are views of the river, so that there are views of the city from the higher levels, and frankly, not just the top level, because we really wanted to allow for the residents of this building to appreciate the atmosphere and the surroundings that we're in, which is a great neighborhood. We've been vested in the development of this property for a while now. We've been through several iterations. We are at this point reaching out and soliciting feedback from the community. And frankly, I very much appreciate everything you're saying. The one thing I will say is charm is, in my opinion, at least, charm is a subjective word. And as Sean mentioned, I think I would really like to hear something, some more specific recommendations so that we can consider them and figure out, how to build the best product on this site.
Sure. Erin, I think you got something you'd like to support here.
Sure. So we are, we own our home on Calumet Street, actually not far from the photo that you guys presented. And we joined tonight just to just show support for this. I know we keep talking about what charming is and East Falls architecture, but I think the fact is that right now that section of Ridge Avenue, and frankly a lot of Ridge Avenue in East Falls, the bar is very low for charming, and I think that this project offers something that we need on that part of the street. The sidewalk right now, it's so overgrown that you can't even walk down it. It isn't walkable. It should be. I think I'd like to see a gateway for East Falls over to the Wissahickon or to the Wissahickon neighborhood. And we thought that the architecture, we thought it was really thoughtful. The tiers and being lined with the trees, with the tree line, I thought that was really cool. And it's just something that, as someone who lives on the lower end of the falls, we would like to see this, just for, the lifestyle the walkable lifestyle that we want to have here. That's all. I just wanted to express our support for that.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Any other comments on the way this building is going to look and fit in the neighborhood?
So back to the idea of submitting comments, when do we have to galvanize our thinking and present that to you guys in a way that's going to be meaningfully heard as part of the development process?
Well, I mean, I guess what I would say, obviously, is the sooner the better. But, just because this process is going forward, we go to CDR. Look, it would be great to have that information in hand by the time we go to CDR. That's the Civic Design Review Committee in early March. That way we can address those comments with CDR and tell the CDR members that we intend to incorporate, which items we can and the reason why we're going to do what we're going to do with those incorporations. If we can't get those kind of comments before early March, say in the next 2 weeks, we can still incorporate those going forward in our zoning plan. So the materiality and things like that don't affect the zoning. So we can be talking about this all the way up through the end of April when we proceed through a zoning design.
Right.
Just so everybody knows, and I think Michael mentioned it briefly, we've already been working with the EFCC Streetscape subcommittee reached out to us and provided us the master plan that it had worked with the Planning Commission on, and Michael showed one slide of. But we're actively trying to work with that group and that streetscape plan to try to incorporate as much as we can and put in the right street lighting that people want and the walkability and pedestrian access that people are looking for here. So, I mean, any design comments like that or any kind of master plan thoughts or considerations, the earlier the better, but, don't think that there's like a hard deadline of February 28th. If you can get them to us in early to mid-March, that's great.
In all candor, though, if the community can't pull together its thoughts prior to you obtaining necessary approvals at zoning, we really lose a little bit of our voice in that process. Isn't that fair to say?
Did you unmute?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think what just to be clear, I think what I heard was that you as the community, your voice is strongest before we go before the zoning board.
Correct.
again, with regard to materiality, your voice is strongest because this development team is willing and interested to work with,
Right.
work with the community and listen to the ideas. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie. I've represented a lot of developers all over the city, and a lot of developers will just check the boxes of having meetings, and they're not changing their building one bit or looking at a streetscape plan or anything else. This development team is very interested in doing that. And so, I think while the building is still in development is certainly the best time to be talking about this and specific ideas. It's once shovels are in the ground, obviously it gets a little difficult. So, again, the sooner the better. But that doesn't mean that there's any strict cutoff.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
One of the tools is, the zoning committee is able, because we're listening in, we see the emails, and we have our own meetings and discussions, can certainly kind of coalesce everything into suggestions and a document. But I'm kind of curious if we would say add balconies at the higher levels, individual balconies, step the building in and out. Is it miraculously going to appear, or is it?
Well, I will suggest, just so everyone knows, the EFCC Zoning Committee has already provided us with kind of some sense of some early comments that they received, one of which included balconies. We're already kicking around the use of balconies and how that would change things and what that would do. So, I can't say that we're committed to incorporating balconies, but, we had decided that we weren't going to include balconies as the plan that you saw. And then the community came back and said, hey, I think we'd really like to see some balconies. I think that would really liven up the building and be an activation that we want. And so, we're going back, and, I've had this conversation with Dan and Michael, and, again, we're investigating the use of balconies there because we hadn't had them included previously, but it's already underway from
Come on, guys.
That you guys had.
Okay, sounds good. Marie, I think you wanted to speak.
You're on mute.
We were agreeing with the comments about the need for charm, the need for beauty. We both felt it looks very much like an office building, very sterile, like a college campus, but not even a beautiful college campus. So I'm very sad about the overall look of it.
You might think about brick and stone rather than what you have.
That's it.
I have a question on site management. Are you going to be managing the property? Is the TAPCO going to be managing the property, or do you sell the building?
I think I'm unmuted here. We do not self-manage our multifamily projects, so we will likely be hiring a third-party management company. We have not selected a management company as of yet, but there will be a professional management team that will be engaged from the beginning. They'll be engaged with the community, but that choice is not, or that decision has not been made yet.
Okay, but you maintain ownership of the building.
We will, as long as we maintain ownership of the building, we will obviously continue to have professional management managing the building. And as I said, we do not do that directly internally with our own people.
But yes, Hillary, I think to more directly answer the question, so a TAPCO, the developer here, is a build and hold developer. They're not one of these developers who gets the approvals and then flips it to somebody else to build, and they're not somebody who gets the approvals, then puts shovels in the ground, and then as soon as the thing is built, flips it to somebody else. The business model is to hold it. So you're dealing with the people who are going to be there. Obviously, all buildings, get sold or don't get sold at various points in the future, but the plan is to build and hold.
Okay.
Sorry.
I had one question going back to the fact that this is a one-point access building with, I think, 2 elevators down one end, one corner of the site, long corridors, which really not you get above a certain expectation of how you want to live. You don't want to be walking down a long corridor like you're living out of a suitcase. So I was thinking there are some buildings that start off rental, then they get changed to condo. There's one room, one set of rooms, single apartments, and they get converted into multi-bedroom apartments because the market changes. Do you think your building can tolerate renovations and transformation to another kind of rental model down the road? Or are we always going to have small one-bedroom apartments for the next 70 years?
I guess I'll start and then I'll let Dan sort of take over. But I did just want to give the unit count mix. So there are larger loft units up towards the top that have their own on the upper floors that have their own outdoor space and their own outdoor roof decks. There are 12 of those. There are 30 two-bedroom units, and there are 110 one-bedroom units, and then another 32 studio units. So we have a fairly diverse mix here, certainly more diverse than my experience has been in a lot of projects coming before the city at the moment. But as far as, I'll let Dan jump in if he kind of understands the question about a different type of rental.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but I think we addressed this earlier on. I mean, we've designed a building that we think makes sense for the market. We think that the unit sizes, frankly, are I think larger than what is typically built in new construction right now. We tried to actually accommodate a little bit of a larger unit to allow people to feel a little bit more comfortable in their home, given that, at least as of today, and who knows how long it will last, but people are spending more time at home. And so we think that the mix makes sense for the target, sort of audience that we will be, catering to. So I'm not sure I completely understood the question, Hillary.
Right. So it was maybe more simple than the way I made it sound. Right. But here you see all these one bedrooms. Is the building going to allow, let's say, for this to become a 2-bedroom unit or a 3-bedroom unit?
We're currently to answer your question, Mr. Longer, we're not currently thinking of it that way. We're working with the structural engineer to understand which way the trusses are going and the most efficient way to do that, whether or not it bear on the corridor wall or between units. But we haven't been thinking of any kind of conversion, say, to bigger units, although it's entirely possible given you could combine those two. But we haven't really set up any kind of repeating module that would lend itself to that at this time. We have not been thinking about this as possibly a conversion to, a hotel, any kind of hospitality or anything to that end, or condos for that matter. It's been a kind of a rental property, at least our mindset.
I would just suggest that I think probably the most well-known rental to ownership conversion, at least that I know of, are the 3 large Society Hill towers, the historically designated. They were originally nurses' units for the nurses who worked at all the local hospitals. They had shuttle buses to and from the hospitals and things like that when Philly wasn't that nice and they needed a place to stay. At this point in time, they have been converted to ownership, and there are no longer small dormitory style apartment rentals inside. They actually have very large, very tremendously impressive, condos in there, some of them multi-story. So certainly all of this can be, redeveloped and converted if that becomes an issue going forward. As far as zoning goes, you can always downgrade in zoning. So we could always in the future, move from, lessen the number of units and make larger, more expansive units that people would want to live in. But, obviously if we ever wanted to increase the number of units, we would have to come back before the RCO and this body and get approval to do so.
Do you have a plan here within the structure of the building that you can add units?
No, we are not. We don't have any convertible space. So there are no spaces that the total number of units that are laid out would be the maximum number of units offered. And obviously this hasn't gone through a final engineering. Anyone on the call who may be familiar with final engineering, if you have 185 units, that may well become 181 or 182 by the time, final engineering is done. So we may decrease by a few, but no, there's no convertible space to, increase from 185 units upwards.
Sean, you had just mentioned shuttle buses. Is that an option for this property? I mean, it seems like it would make sense. It would alleviate the traffic. Like when you mentioned it, it just made me think, like a shuttle bus going up to the train station or a shuttle bus going to City Avenue, instead of having 10, 15 cars coming out, maybe that shuttle bus can shuttle, the people that live there or something like that. Would that be an option?
So I think in short, absolutely. I mean, these are the types of creative ideas that, our professional management companies come up with. And if you have, a ton of people who, honestly, if you live in this building, you don't want to drive your car 1 mile to a train station where then you can't find parking there.
But you can't walk there from that property. There's no way to walk to that train station. It's just too far of a walk. Right.
It's too far of a walk and it's uphill. But, a shuttle bus would make, a tremendous amount of sense. And so absolutely that's a possibility going forward. Anything like that would be, it would be beneficial to the community. It would be beneficial to our future residents to offer that sort of amenity. All of that stuff is on the table. And, I would not be surprised at all if I saw that, here in the coming years.
Thank you.
Let me just add one point, is that, it's not an unreasonable suggestion. And frankly, something that maybe even in conjunction with some of the other developments, it could be pulled together and actually have even potentially more impact. But it's about a half a mile from our site to the train station. And I've walked it a few times and I would say it actually is very walkable. Obviously times of year and weather and conditions and what have you could impact that, but it is pretty walkable from the site to the train station.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other comments for, oppose, in support for the project as presented tonight? Go, Todd.
Good evening. What's the total development cost?
We're still working through budgets right now, so I don't have an absolute number right now. So it's, as Sean pointed out, the plans are still in development. There's a lot of work to do to finalize things. So right now, I don't have a definitive number to share.
Ballpark?
I'd say I'd rather not kind of sort of throw out a number that may or may not move meaningfully from what I say, but as we refine numbers, we can talk, Todd.
Plus Dan doesn't want to tell me because he never tells the architect how much something costs. Let's just keep going.
Okay. I'd like to just try something and to see how this would go for getting a kind of a census here, just as an experiment. can all those people who own dogs raise their hands?
Who, what?
Can everyone who owns a dog raise their hand? I just want to see if I can count. Sorry, the hand, the computer hand.
Well, I don't have a dog, so.
Oh, no, the computer, the hand on the computer.
Hillary, raise your hand if what?
And
Go down to reactions.
the
on the
voting, I just want to see.
I understand you want to vote, but what does raising your hand signify?
That you have a dog.
You're not actually voting on anything. Hillary's just trying out a method in order to take a formal vote.
I understand that, but what is the question?
Oh, sorry, whether you own a dog.
Whether you own a dog?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 people. Okay, so I think we can take a vote just by raising hands. Okay, so can everybody lower their hands, please?
Hands.
Aaron? Aaron, your hand's up. And-
I'm sorry, where is the hand thing?
Go down to the bottom bar, reactions. You see reactions with the little smiley face? And go into that.
Reactions, yeah.
And then there's a.
I see it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so try raising your hand, Bill. It's practice.
How's that?
Oh, that's good. Okay. I'll take a thumbs up or a hand. That's good. Okay, so let's raise your hand if you support the project as presented tonight, and I will follow it by raise your hands if you oppose the project as presented tonight. So those are going to be the two, just so as you know that there's a vote in support exactly as presented, and then there's going to be a vote for a project that is not as there's going to be a vote to oppose the project as presented, with the expectation that down the road we're going to get a project with balconies, better materials, and some concessions. Okay.
Hillary, I'm honestly, I'm slightly confused by what our two votes are. Is it you support it, you support it with changes, you oppose it? Do we have three choices? I'm not sure what you're asking us.
All right. So I agree, Hillary, and maybe I can make this easier because of what we need legally. So when we show up to have this project before CDR and before the zoning board, we as the developer need a letter from the RCO that says there were 30 people in attendance and we voted, 2 people didn't vote and 18 people voted one way and 10 people voted another way. So we need an up or down vote on the project. As you've heard tonight, we fully intend to continue working with you as to the development of the materiality and the exterior of the building. But this is simply as far as the zoning goes of the project. You will still, as a community, get to present all of these comments that you've made tonight through Hillary into the Civic Design Review Committee, which takes into account actual design elements and materiality and all of that sort of stuff. So what we need to do, Hillary, is a vote on the project, as presented, or opposed, as in, nothing we can do can make up your mind for you to support it.
I would like to, I think that's a good idea, but I would like to hold on to some leverage down the road, because I think by supporting the project right now as presented, it kind of says, well, we're really okay with it.
Well,
it's like,
well, so
no,
again,
it's got to have some changes to it.
just to be clear, you can also support it with, you can vote to support, and usually, honestly, what the letter has from the RCO is to say, we support it because we like these aspects and we don't like these aspects, and the developer has said that they will change these aspects. So the vote doesn't go in cold as this many against and this many for to the board. It actually goes into an incorporated letter where what you like and don't like and what you support and don't support specifically gets included.
Sean, can I make a comment for a moment? I think it's important for the zoning committee to get a sense of the room and find out, who supports it the way it is, who might support it with certain changes, who doesn't support it at all. But that's not what goes into the letter. There are representatives of zoning, and those zoning people, when we get off this call, and I include myself in that as the East Falls Community Council president, but I'm not currently actively voting on zoning, the zoning committee will have a discussion where they will consider the comments that have been raised by the community. They will consider your presentation. They'll look at all of that, and then they will write a letter that either supports or doesn't support this. So it is not about the vote that is taken now. This is any voting that happens right now is simply to make sure that the members of the zoning committee have a clear understanding of the mood in the room or in the Zoom.
Certainly, and I apologize if I stepped on your toes. I was not, I wasn't trying to get into your process, and frankly didn't know your process. Hillary, if you would you mind just stopping sharing your screen?
Sure.
Yeah, make us a little bigger on the screen.
I've just had a hard time going back and forth.
I think Hillary, you have a good idea with the vote, so to speak, and maybe if we could clearly understand what the options are and where people quote unquote raise their hand is really reactions, and there are 6 different reaction symbols. So I would suggest using some different symbols so there's no confusion and delay as we vote. Just thumbs up if you want to go forward with it. Maybe that little laughing, crying face for something. Who knows?
So let's just make it kind of simple right now. So, raise your hand if you support the project and you want to see this project built as presented. So raise your hands right now. So someone help me count here.
I'm not seeing any hands for as built, as presented.
I'm seeing one.
See one.
It's in the participants window.
8
hands at least.
So hang on.
How am I seeing it?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7, 8, 9.
There's 6.
I'm counting 10. Supporting as presented.
I got 12.
You got 12?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Lower your hands. Okay. Raise your hand if you completely oppose this project. I'm getting 7. Did you get that?
Oh.
Yeah, you counting 7?
Give me a minute there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8.
Okay. All right. And temperature, lower your hands. Who would support this project with significant changes relating to aesthetics, balconies, some negotiation on the number of units?
Well, that's a pretty big range of.
Who would support this project with changes?
Hillary, again, it depends on changes. I mean, personally speaking, just for myself, I'm not as stuck on the idea of design, although I think it could be improved. I'm stuck on the idea of the number of units. So, you could change the colors, materials, all that you want. Personally, I wouldn't support it if it's still 188 units.
So I'm saying, would you support it as with changes to the way the building looks, but with the same number of units?
Okay, that's a question.
Okay, so I'm counting, if you could count 2.
I don't see 1, 2.
I'm getting 10.
I got 12. I got 14.
14. Okay. So we have, going to say 37 people in the room, of which 4, I think can't vote because you're part of the...
Hillary, just to be upfront with everyone, we have 7 participants on the call.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to identify them if you want specifically people called out, but we have 7 people on the call.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So I think that there are 30 total votes.
Great. So I counted 27 voting and Bruce counted 26, 30, 34. So I think that's most people in the room have voted and let us know which way they would go. Okay. All right, good. So I would like to conclude this, except with one question. Sean, you don't yet have confirmation of the March 2nd CDR, do you?
Unfortunately, I do not. I believe I will have it early next week, probably Tuesday, latest Wednesday. Unfortunately, if I could control it, we would certainly be on that agenda. Unfortunately, that is completely controlled by the Planning Commission staff. So I will advise you as soon as I know whether we're on the March 2nd agenda or not. I presume we will be, but again, I can't confirm that for anyone.
All right. And another question, is your purchase complete from PHA or are you still in negotiation?
We are not in negotiations. We're just basically at this point, it's complete, contingent upon zoning approval. So we are the equitable owner of the property.
Okay. Any other questions on this project from participants?
If everything goes through, when would you be breaking ground?
Dan, what do you think? If we got approvals and everything started, I would presume early 2022 to mid 2022, maybe second quarter 2022.
I think that's fair. It's a, it's an uncertain sort of timing process with respect to approvals. And so some things may take longer, but I think that's a reasonable estimation.
Okay, thank you.
And just before we jump off, I will suggest, I'll throw here in the chat my contact information in case anyone doesn't have it. If anyone has questions that weren't answered tonight or follow-ups that they want to ask me directly, then that's fine. Otherwise, I will be in, further contact with Hillary, and so you can obviously, send him whatever information you may want us to have.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's conclude 4401 Ridge Avenue and speak very briefly to 3445 Division Street and 3018 Midvale. These are really status updates. Could you mute yourselves? Thank you.
All right, with that, Hillary, 4401 will drop off if you guys don't have anything more for us.
Okay, thanks. Sean.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate everyone's time and diligence here.
Have a good night, Sean.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Everybody.
All right. So I'm going to give a brief update on 3445 Division Street. We had the zoning appeal hearing was on the 10th of February, last Wednesday. And so I'm going to have to mute someone.
Is that the ZBA you're talking about?
Yeah, we we had a 3:30 time slot. We were still on at 6:30, 6:45. The zoning board's patience was wearing a little thin. We got about 3/4 of the way through our appeal, their appeal. We are very much opposing the project, looking for more concessions in height to provide daylight. We were just about getting to the vote, and Curtis Jones had opposed the project, which is great in its current proposed form.
You say he opposed it?
He did oppose it, yeah. The city planning representative then put in her 2 cents, and she said, oppose the project. It should be a single family per the zoning on the site and the site. And at that point, Councilman DeChico, President DeChico said, we're just going to continue this hearing. There's too much disagreement in the neighbors as to what they want to see. We've got to spend more time on this. So we're supposedly going back for a continued hearing on the 3rd of March. Since then, I believe the neighbors seem to be getting all on one page, and are kind of going down the road of just a single home on the lot, not a double home. So neighbors are beginning to come together on that. As you know, the problem with Division Street is a very narrow street. They're proposing a tall building that would basically block daylight. They're proposing 2 garages that would be very hard to turn into, and it's a complete blind turnout when you come out of your garage. It's a basic overdevelopment. The immediate neighbors are very upset, right, Linda?
You said it.
Right. Okay, any questions on Division Street? Okay. 3018 Midvale is the legalization of an illegal structure built without permits. It's pretty clear it was built knowingly because the contractor is the owner is a licensed contractor that builds a lot in Philly. So, you know, kind of knows you about what you have to do to get a project. Most of the neighbors really want the structure torn down because it doesn't conform with zoning in any way. Footprint, location of footprint, height of the building, building use. But we were in the hearing again, very, very late, late in the day. Waited about 3.5 hours, 4 hours for the project to come up. There's a technical issue on the zoning application. There is still applying for accessory storage above a garage. And obviously their intent is for a dwelling unit. So based on a number of technicalities and the obvious hostility in the meeting and the fact that they had 7 or 8 neighbors all waiting to speak, President DeCicco said, we're going to resume this hearing. It was going to be today. It turned out not to be today. And we don't know what date that it will be resumed.
That was also on February 10th?
That was on January 27th.
So at this point, we don't know when it's going to be continued to.
No, not yet.
Is construction stopped there, Hillary?
I hope so.
It's typically not been stopped. It might be stopped now, but it has typically not been stopped.
Yeah. The neighbors are patrolling the building.
Okay.
Outrageous, just outrageous.
What's the address again, Hillary?
3018 Midvale Avenue. It's a 2-lot property. There's a front lot and a back lot, and they're both on the one deed. So he built a double garage with a dwelling unit above a 2-story structure that's really a house. And there's only 2 structures back there, and they're both, one is very small, certainly probably no more than 12 feet tall. Just a garage with a peak roof. And there is one larger structure that is attached to a dwelling, to the house.
Yeah, Representative, if you look at last month's East Falls Now, there's a photograph of it on the front page.
I already got it because I saw the addresses in my district, so I'm always...
Right, it is in your district, correct.
Yep, I already know. So I'm always looking at development projects because I want to know the licenses. You know, I always like to do my homework. So,
right,
thank
and
you.
as the chairperson mentioned, this was built entirely without permits of any kind and without the proper zoning. And it was built that way by a guy who does a lot of development in the city and who can't claim, oh, I didn't know I need permits. You know,
It was built out of code also, so it's not even in code. So
right, who knows? Yeah, what's been done inside? We haven't gotten inside to see, but you're right. If he
but even on the outside, right? He built it to the edge of the thing. He's supposed to be set back 3 feet. Am I right, Hillary? That's what
right. Yeah, he's supposed to have a 3-foot setback. So he's only back 18 inches from his neighbor's property line, and then of course he's put very large windows in that elevation looking right into his neighbor's garden. So that's against the code also. So that's the update on that. They're both, one is continued, one is resumed, and we have a projected date for the continued hearing on March the 3rd. But don't,
That's for Division Street, but we have no date for Midvale Avenue, right?
no.
Date unknown, okay.
Hillary,
Yes,
excuse me, is Emily still on?
yes.
Hi, Emily. I hope I'm not taking this out of order, but since she is the president of East Falls Community, I just want to bring to her attention that Mackenzie owns a beauty salon, and she called several people about that party, the men coming in and out where they want to build at Felipe's 3501, Conrad. Those 5 units they want to put in there. She said she's going to hire someone to see if that's legit, and how did he get it without letting the neighbors know. She's going to call the commissioner, and she wants that checked out. How did that go through? I said he has the lot. He has a right to build. I was told it was only 2, now it's up to 5. Todd, have you
Linda, what's the address again?
35, Felipe's building.
Felipe, okay, Felipe Cini's building, okay.
Yeah.
He has, as far as we know, Hillary, he hasn't come up with anything yet, has he? Has he presented any plans to us?
There is, the single lot has been subdivided,
right,
supposedly legally, into compliant lots. So each lot is above the code minimum for building
right,
single family home.
right.
So it's above the 1440 each lot. But 2 of the lots are very strangely shaped. They're kind of hourglass shapes. It's got a little square in the back and a long, thin pathway about 50 feet long that connects the square in the front. 2 are shaped like that.
Is that against the code?
I don't think so. I think the code allows you to be as creative as you want in creating those, the lot.
Well, again,
and the thing is, we have asked a couple of people, I have, and Todd has, to, just check out if the zoning subdivision is kosher, is did they miss anything? And so far, we've all heard nothing.
Well, somebody has to answer that, because that's a good question.
Linda,
Why is
can
it?
I just ask why you raised the question? Is there objection to the plans?
Definitely there is. So, the neighbors are very upset about it.
About what? They were upset about what he wanted to do a year ago, but what are they upset about now?
Because they thought it was only 2 houses going to be built, now there's 5.
Oh, wait a minute, Linda, we're talking in public now, so let's be clear. Nobody ever suggested that it was only appropriate to build 2 houses and that you couldn't build any more on that property. At the time we discussed his last plans, which he withdrew, it was made clear that he could put as many as 5, 6, or 7 houses legally without any zoning change on that property. So let's not tell anybody that he's only allowed to put 2 there, because that's just not true.
I didn't say anything to anybody just in this meeting. I'm saying I want to know why nobody hasn't gotten back to Hillary. He asked to have this looked into to see if it's up to code, and nobody's gotten back. So all I want to say on the record is this. These developers or people can't build in a community without having input. And like Hillary was telling me, his friends, they built a house and they did a lot of damage. We got to set a tone that you can't just come and build and do what you want without approval. I don't think it's right.
Well, you're right, Linda, except if it's allowed by the current zoning.
But they didn't get back to Hillary.
Right.
Little we can do about it.
Yeah.
If it's something that we...
Excuse me, Bill, nobody's gotten back to Hillary to answer that question.
Linda, let me clarify. The lots are legal, okay? They're unusual, okay? But he's building 5 legal buildings, single-family homes, and he does not have to show anybody the plans or the elevations. So they're 100% legal, okay? I was just asking someone to take a look at the way the lot was subdivided. Because to me, that struck me as being unusual, but no one's gotten back to me. So right now I'm assuming they're legal. But he's allowed to build 5 by right homes there. He doesn't need to share the plans or the elevations or the materials or.
Yes, he does have to show his plans to L&I, doesn't he, to get permits and so forth?
Yeah, he has the permits.
So he's already, well, in that case, he's already shown them something in the way of plans to get a permit, right?
Right, but they're not posted on the city website, and he doesn't have to share them with us.
Okay. As long as L&I says they're okay.
Mm-hmm. So he has a construction permit.
Right.
He put a porta potty with the door facing the hair salon, and so they would actually like him to turn the porta potty around so they don't see the guys coming out.
Okay.
Zipping up.
Well, everything should be that easy to resolve.
Right.
Do we know what his response has been to that request?
Well, one request was for me to fix it, but my back's in bad shape right now.
No, I don't mean for you physically to fix it, but to ask Philippe. I mean, I'd be glad to call Philippe and say, could you please turn the door around?
Right.
The porta potty, if that's the problem.
If you have his number, that would be great.
I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah.
I'll send him a text right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize, Linda, for overreacting, but we need to be careful with our language, because if people go away from this meeting thinking that, gee, Philippe is doing something inappropriate because he's building more than 2 units on that property, that person or persons is misinformed.
Well, I'm not putting no misinformation. I'm talking directly to Hillary and Todd. And all I'm saying is, on the record, is they haven't gotten a response from nobody. So if it's legal and that's why they're not getting back, then it's fine. But I think out of respect that he's a zoning and Todd, somebody should have said something so that it's clear that it's okay. Because things fell through zoning before, Bill, as we know. Am I right, Hillary?
They have done, yes.
Todd?
If you want, I can share my screen and show you the subdivision plan that got approved. It's very creatively drawn.
Please.
So it is public, and that's what I was trying to get to. I mean,
well, the subdivision, hold on one sec, I'll show you the subdivision plan, not the building permits. And I'm not, you gotta green light me, Hillary, if you want me to do that. And I think probably at one of the many terrible meetings about earlier versions of 3501 Bowman Street, there were discussions about different number of units and what was possible. And it's totally possible that I said he could only do 2 by right. But I think the point is that his very creative architect, can people see this now on my screen?
Yes.
His very creative architect created these like absurd parcels here. It's like a backward Z shape. And then this one here. So they get the appropriate square footage with this absurd jog. And I mean, just myself, like I had no idea that someone would undertake drawing such a creative parcel.
What is that, a hallway? I mean, is that a hallway?
No, that's the land. That's not the building. That's the land, because the subdivision is related. I don't know. I'd need to look it up, but
maybe it's a walkway to get to the garage.
It's not a building. It's the land.
Understand that. So maybe it's meant to be a walkway to get.
Just meant to get 5 It's just meant to get 5 parcels out of the available space as absurdly as possible. Probably because he's angry about how everything went down, because it was terrible. But that's not to say that this isn't bad. I'm just saying that like that was a terrible sequence of events, and now we're here, and he got this architect to get the subdivision approved with this like pretty absurd parcel plan. So, but that the city granted it means that they felt it was legit. And what Linda's asking and what Hillary's referencing is, could we ask for someone to re-review that to see if it was incorrectly approved? And we've asked the councilman's staff, and that hasn't been effective, I gather, because Josh hasn't called me, and I asked him to call you, Linda, and he hasn't called Hillary. So, and then we could also, there are ways to appeal permits, and there are all these other things to do. I'm not saying I'm doing them, I'm just saying they're doable. But that did get a green light, that drawing.
Hillary, didn't you say you spoke to Bednar about this to check it out?
Yeah, he did not get back to me, but we're having a
But see, we need answers so we can lay this to rest and let people know it's done the right way.
Right. We're having a conversation on Friday morning at 7:30. So I'm going to see if he can give me an update.
Well, he lives right behind me. Maybe you could just walk over and look at it.
Yeah. So, we're continuing to follow through, but it looks like what he's going to be doing is building on just the first 5 lots.
And I think just to be clear, like if I'm the one who said he could do 2 units by right before some of those terrible earlier meetings, I had no idea someone would like draw parcels like that and get it approved. It's like, it's very creative, but that discrepancy could be my fault. I don't really know. It was a long time ago.
Well, maybe that's where they're getting this to there's 2 houses, from before. But you know what, Hillary, I think maybe you need to really check into it, and you have to get some respect. They just can't do things without responding to you or the community.
I'm checking all I can. So yeah, I would just like to share something.
I'll email Josh again right now, but Linda, Josh loves you. I think you should also call him, but I will ask him.
I just spoke to Josh today.
What did he say?
What did he say?
No, I didn't bring that up. I was talking about trying to get the COVID bus.
What are you talking to him about then? This is the hot stuff.
Well, wait a minute. I'll get on him tomorrow about this, and I'm going to also, I want to go over to the zoning board, and I'm going to call the commissioner and ask him to check this out. Because Tad, and Bill, you were at that meeting. These neighbors are upset. They're very upset about this.
I hadn't noticed.
You were there, Bill. You know it.
I mean, he probably did this because of that.
The neighbors were quite rude.
I gotta go, folks. Great to see you all.
Hey,
thank you, Todd.
Thank
Bill,
you.
Take it easy.
Bill,
Hillary.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, is Emily still on?
No, she's not.
Mm. Well, Hillary, maybe you can speak.
I still am on, Bill. I'm here.
Still there. Oh, I thought you said good night to everybody in the chat room.
Well, I thought we were closing in on the end of the meeting.
Yeah,
I hit send prematurely.
Just do.
Emily.
Right.
Linda, please.
I want to say something to Emily, please.
We're doing all we can, okay?
May I speak to Emily, please?
We're doing what we can.
I understand. Emily, may I speak, please?
Yes, Linda, but do you want us to maybe talk offline so that Hillary can end our...
I want this on record. So all I want to say is, when we spoke the other night in the meeting, you said something that was respectful and right. You said we need to set some perimeters and do things with the zoning, for our community. So all I'm saying is that Hillary is the zoning board chair, and he's reaching out to get some answers, and they're not responding to him. That's disrespectful to me, and we should not sit back and allow people not to respond. Is all I'm saying. You being the East Falls president, if you wrote me a letter, I would get back to you. I wouldn't just blow you away. I just called respect. Is all I'm saying. And I think they should have come and reviewed it like Hill requested that Bednar, with the city planning, and looked, because, hey, we just can't let them come in and do what they want without making sure that it's right.
We all agree with that, Linda.
Linda, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'll work with Hillary to support him and back him up and make sure that he's getting responded to as quick as he can.
I appreciate
Why
it,
don't we-
Emily.
Let's turn this back over to Hillary because I have a feeling he might want to wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up, and thanks everyone for being in the meeting. Those of the surviving, I'm just leaving you with a little screen share of what he is building on what is the address is turned from Bowman into Conrad. So he's building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little homes here, and they're basically trinities. And these are by right, and he has approval and he has a construction permit.
So then this is different than what Todd showed us, right?
No, this is actually a plan which Michelle found. So I think this is something they've recently added to the zoning.
But it doesn't have those this goofy little slim line.
Yeah, it still has it here. See this property here?
Right.
Has the thin little line going in the back. So I guess, you know, their kids have a little swing set, you know, go out and play and come back in 2 hours, you know, down the back.
Where's parking, Hillary?
He looks like he's maintaining the parking under the building, and then the parking is going to be on the street.
So he doesn't have to provide garages?
He doesn't have to provide garages or parking.
He's not providing garages.
Single-family homes, you don't have to provide garages or parking.
Which I'm personally totally okay with, because if you put garages in the front of these, it makes the buildings real ugly, and then it takes away parking on the street anyway, so no one wins.
Right.
Bruce, excuse me. How many apartments do you think Felipe has in that building there?
That's not,
Big building?
No, I'm asking Bruce. How many apartments does he have? About 40?
I walked through there, Lyndon. No, he doesn't have 40 in there.
Not that
No, I'm
many.
talking about on Sunnyside. He did a lot of remodeling on Sunnyside. Now, I'm not
Right, but
talking
he
about
He said he has 20 to 25.
right.
Okay.
Without checking.
Right. So look, you know, this is being recorded, and I think what we're doing now is really an offline discussion. So I would like to end the meeting and
Move for adjournment.
Yeah.
Motion for adjournment.
thanks.
I second. Thanks, everybody.
To,
All right, have a good night. Thank you.
Rucker. Thanks for coming along tonight and listening about our neighborhood here. Appreciate it.
Time, sir. Here to
Thanks,
serve.
Thank you. Good night then.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.